Hello, my name is Guru. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I was born and brought up in Chennai, India. I'm going to read a book with the name Manu Mixes Clay and Sunshine, authored by Bulbul Sharma, illustrator Shanti Devi. Manu looked out of the doorway from his bed. The sun had already risen. He should have got up earlier, but last night they had gone to sleep very late. It had been firing day, and firing day meant hard work for everyone in the family. Manu's grandfather and his father were potters, and Manu was going to be one too. It was not an easy craft to learn, and you needed very skilled fingers to be able to make a perfect pot. The rainy season, which was a long holiday for potters since they could not do any firing, had just ended and the sky looked very clear. This week was going to be a very exciting week. Today, Manu was going to, with his dada, his grandfather, to dig clay near the river. And at the end of the week, Baba, his father, had agreed to take him to the city with him to sell the pots at the market. Manu already knew that the basics of art of pottery. When he was a baby, he had been given a lump of clay to play with. At first, he just rolled about it, squeezing it in his tiny hands. When he was about 3 years old, he was asked to make the lump into a ball. Every afternoon, after they came back from the school, Manu and his sister Shushma, who was an year older than him, sat under the shade of an old peepal tree and rolled tiny balls of clay. Some were crooked and would not sit properly in their palms, but some came out very nicely. Manu loved touching the clay in summer because it felt so cool. In winter, he stayed away from the pile of clay and helped Ma make toys. They made fat men, tall women, dogs, deer, owls, and toy carts. The other day, his mother made a beautiful bell with a clay rope 4 feet long. Manu heard his mother calling and quickly jumped off the bed, almost bumping his head on a large clay pot full of grain which stood near it. He managed to avoid it just in time. Manu was quite used to bumping into the clay pots of all shapes and sizes. Their small hut was filled to the ceiling with the earthen pots or clay teacups, flower pots, clay bowls for selling yogurt. In one corner sat all the wonderful toys his mother had made. During festivals, people came to their house to buy their little Ganesh and Lakshmi statues. Before Diwali, sacks full of small diyas made by Manu and Shushma were piled up in the hut. "Hey Manu, give us some," his friends would ask, so Manu always nods, makes a few extra lamps, and it felt good to be able to give your friends something you had made with your own hands. Not everyone can do it. We potters have special hands that work like magic to make so many wonderful things out of just a lump of clay. Ma said to him and gave him a few toys for his friends. In summer, their hut was so cool. On rainy days, the raindrops on the tin roof sounded like the machine gun fire. In winter, Baba took the pots out and cleaned them with fresh coat of geru colors that made them browny red. Outside in the kiln were many pots that did not have space to store. As soon as the market day is over, I will build a new house for storing the pots. Manu can help me. He's a big boy now, said Baba, smiling at him. Manu felt very proud at being called a big boy. He puffed out his chest and grinned. Manu went out of the hut and, taking a bucket of water, began to wash his face. He chewed a neem twig to clean his teeth. The bitter juice woke him up properly, and he rinsed his mouth quickly. The sweet tea made the bitter taste go away as Manu sipped it from the kulad that smelled of fresh earth. He tore a hot chapati and dipped it into the liquid before he ate it. Manu, come on, it's getting late, son. You must leave before the sun gets too hot, said the Dada. He was wearing a large white turban and carried a spade in his hands. Though he was old, Manu's grandfather could walk faster than anyone in their village. People came to him far away to learn how to make large clay pots to store grain. Only he could make such huge ones, and he helped other potters. Here, the pile of sacks on the donkey, Manu, he said. Watch out, he may try to kick you like last time, said Shushma, laughing loudly. Manu picked up the sacks and went to the donkey who was chewing grass. They both looked at each other for a minute, and then, just when the donkey blinked, Manu quickly threw the sack on its back. The animal snorted once or twice, shrugged its shoulders, went back to chewing grass. Well done, said Shushma and clapped her hands. Manu and his grandfather sat out at once. The sky was a beautiful pink and orange color, and a cool breeze touched their faces. They left the village boundary and began walking towards the river. Many farmers, who were already in their fields, watering their crops, called out to them. Off to the river to catch fish, Govindlal. Dada laughed but did not stop to chat with them. Everyone was very busy these days, working all day long, only stopping briefly to have their lunch under the shade of a tree. Soon they reached the river bank, and Manu ran towards the banyan tree. He looked up, his eyes brighter and eager. Yes, it was there. Two round yellow eyes looked down at Manu, and a brown head nodded. The spotted owlet was saying, Welcome to my river, Manu. The little boy smiled and went down to the river. Dada had already found a place to dig. They began to dig up the clay. It was not very difficult since it had rained a few days earlier and the earth was soft. Manu dug first a spade, and then he cleared the tiny pebbles away with his hands. He gathered the lumps of clay in one pile. When the pile was large enough, he began filling the sacks. The sun was now high up in the sky, and they were feeling quite hot. Come, let us rest for a while, said Dada. They sat down under the banyan tree and opened the bundle of chapatis Manu's mother had packed for them. They finished eating, and then, just as Manu said, Dada, my old legs are saying something. Manu smiled and began pressing Dada's legs. Dada, tell me about the river ghost. The old man shut his eyes, began to speak in a soft voice. When I was a child, we had to go to a very far to fetch clay. In those days, our village did not have proper roads. One day, the donkey sat down and refused to get up. It was getting dark, and we did not know what to do. Suddenly, a man came up to us. He was carrying a large black clay pot. I can make your donkey walk, but you'll have to take time. You'll have to take me back to the village, he said, holding the pot on his head. We agreed. Then he said a few words in donkey's ears, tapped the clay pot, and the donkey got up at once. The man climbed on the donkey's back, still holding the pot on his head, and we set off. Just when we were about to reach the village, he jumped off and ran into the darkness, tapping the clay pot. The people in the village said he was Bhagavan Vishwakarma's potter who had come to help us. Manu tugged at grandfather's toes gently. He knew he liked this. Now, Dada, tell me a story about Bhagavan Vishwakarma's pot. His grandfather opened one eye and looked at him. You rascal, how many times have I told you this story? You tell it to me this time. I will shut my eyes and listen. Manu raised his voice so that the owlet could hear his story too. Once upon a time, the Devas, the gods, the Asuras, the demons decided to churn an ocean of milk. They were looking for nectar. A giant serpent was the rope, and a huge turtle was the pivot. After a lot of hard work, and many wonderful things began to appear from the ocean. A magical tree, a wish with a cow, a flying horse, and finally the nectar. But where was a pot to hold his nectar? Bhagavan Vishwakarma quickly came forward and crafted a pot out of clay. From then on, humans learned to make pots. Manu thought for a while and said, "Our potter wheel is one of the first machines made by man that uses the power of motion." Dada lifted his head and looked at him with a surprise. "Who told you that?" Manu laughed and tickled his grandfather's feet. "My teacher in the school told us." She also said the potter's craft is one of the oldest crafts in the world, and they have found many clay toys and pots buried under the ground in the places where people lived thousands of years ago. Manu tried to recall the many other things his teacher had told him about potters. How they made the first brick, how they dug the earth to make a pit. But Dada was getting ready to leave. After loading the sacks on the donkey, they set off. Manu looked at the owlet and it winked at him twice, as if to say, "Come back soon." There is a plenty of clay left on the riverbank. The following day, after he got back from the school, Manu helped Baba break the now dried clay into small pieces. Later, they would use a big sieve to separate the stones, and then his parents would knead the clay with water. Sometimes Manu and Shushma helped by jumping up and down the wet clay. Manu liked to stomp on his bed of clay because it made a funny, squiddy sound when his feet sank into it. Once the clay was well kneaded and his father had prodded it with fingers few times to check it was ready. They molded it a few huge lumps and stored it under the damp sack. Every day, Baba and Dada would like to bit of a lump out and shape it into balls. These would be thrown on the wheel to make few pots. In a quick turns, a beautiful pot would rise on the wheel as if by magic. 1 second there was just a lump of clay and then a pot stood in its place. Manu was learning to use the wheel, but so far the pots he had made were not as balanced as the ones his father or grandfather made. His fell down and had long necks that dropped or fat sides that bulged out. Shushma laughed at these funny shapes because she could just twist a bed of clay in a long snake and quickly coil it into a perfect pot. But Manu knew how to shape toy animals, and Shushma kept asking him to give her one. He made a big owl which was in the kiln getting baked. He would give it to Shushma on Diwali, but it was a secret now. Shushma made a toy car for her brother, and it was too in the kiln sitting next to the owl. Only Baba, who loaded the kiln, knew about these little gifts. The kiln was still hot. It would take at least 3 days for it to cool, and then they would break it open. Manu loved the smell of freshly baked pots. It was as good as the fragrance that floated up when the first raindrops fell on the ground. Building the kiln took a long time, and only his father and Dada knows how to do it really well. First, they dug the shallow pit in the ground. They could not fire the pots till the sun had dried them completely, and even a bit of water would make the kiln burst. After checking that the pots had dried, they stacked them one by one in the pit, carefully placing the dried grass and straw in between. Then they broke something cow dung cakes and covered the pots with them. Finally, the entire pile was covered with wet earth, and Baba would ask Manu and Shushma to pat it. "You have small hands, you can do its bits." Manu and Shushma would pat the earth very gently and carefully. Shushma would run around the kiln singing, fire our pots, well then, fill them with laddus, puff rice and jaggery." As soon as the song finished, Ma would bring a metal plate of jaggery from the hut. It was believed to be lucky to have something sweet when the kiln was fired. Once the kiln cooled down, they would take the pots out and the Baba would go to the market to sell them. And this time, he had agreed to take Manu with him. The week passed slowly. Manu could not keep his mind on his studies. All day long, he thought about the trip to the big city. His teacher had agreed to let him miss a school for a day on condition that he wrote the description of his trip to share with the class. Finally, the day arrived. Manu and his father loaded the new pots and the toys on 2 donkeys to take them to the bus stop. Everyone in the village knew where they were going as both Manu and Baba were dressed in their best clothes. Baba had tied with a new turban and Manu was wearing a black trousers and a white shirt just like a city boy. Manu's uncle, who lived in the nearby village, was also going to the market. He made water traps for animals. Now they use them in city gardens to plant flowers, he said, twirling his white mustache and laughing. The bus arrived. It was crowded, but they managed to load the pots and the baskets, toys on its roof. The bus gave a loud bang, groaned, and coughed, and then lurched forward. They were on their way to the big city. Manu watched the fields go by, waving to children playing in villages just like his. When he and Shushma waved to the passengers in the train or bus, he felt very happy when they waved back. The bus reached the outskirts of the city after 5 long hours. They waited till everyone got out and then climbed on the roof to get their pots down. Luckily, nothing was broken. Now they had to find 2 rickshaws to find and take them to the market. "You wait near the pots, I will settle the price with them," said his father. Finally, after much haggling, the rickshaw drivers agreed. "All this costs so much, the bus fare, the rickshaws. We hardly have any money left over," said Baba. They went to a big shop in the market which sold all kinds of terracotta things. When the shopkeeper paid them for the pots and toys, Baba did not look too sad. This time, the sale is good. All the pots have been sold. Those toys your mother and you made have fetched good money. They won't many more, he said. "Come, Manu, let us eat something." They found a shop that sold hot milk and jalebis. Manu ate quickly because he was very hungry, but he also looked around him all the time. The cars, the lights, the noise of so many people rushing about, it all made his head spin. They walked around a bit and then they saw a mela. The entrance to the fair glittered with the bright lights. Manu ran ahead, pulled his father's hand. There were hundreds of toy shops, unusual games, and stalls of food. In the middle of the fairground stood a giant wheel. Baba gave him money and he ran to the ticket counter. Soon he was high up in the sky, flying like a bird. It was late when they went back to the bus stop. They were tired but very happy. Manu's father counted the money he had made and smiled. It was not much, but he would be able to buy a new wheel that was better than their old one. They had bought a sari for Ma, a new jacket for Dada, and clothes for Manu and Shushma. "What about you, Baba?" Manu asked. "I really don't need anything," his father replied as they sat down in their seats in the bus. The bus would leave only after an hour. But Manu had decided that he was going to buy Baba something. He counted the money he had left. He had only brought the giant wheel ticket and some candy floss. He still had 7 rupees in his pocket. His father had fallen asleep in his seat and did not stir as Manu got off the bus. Manu ran up to a small shop near the bus stop and asked the old man, who was dozing in a chair, "What can you give for my father for 7 rupees?" The man smiled and asked, "What does your father like?" "I don't know. We are potters. We have come from our village to sell our pots and toys." The old man thought for a while and sighed, Let me see. Potters work very hard, but they have magic in their hands. What can we city people give them? They can create anything they want. Cups, bowls, toys, and even tables. Maybe an umbrella? You cannot make an umbrella out of clay, but you have only 7 rupees and an umbrella cost 60. What shall we do? He peered at Manu. "I have no money, but I can do some work, but our bus won't leave for another hour," said Manu, looking at the umbrella. How nice and big it was. It would keep the sun and rain out. "All right," said the old man. "Help me to put these sacks on top of the shelf." Manu jumped. The sacks were not heavy at all. Carrying clay from the river bank and kneading clay had given him strong arm and muscles. In half an hour, he had pulled at the sacks up the shelf. Then he helped the shopkeeper gather some paper bags and stacked up neat piles. "You are a strong fellow, though you are small. Here, take your umbrella. Don't tell anyone I gave it to you, or else they will ask for one. And here are some biscuits for you to eat on the bus." Manu ran back to the bus and hid the umbrella under the seat. The noise woke Baba. What? What is that? Someone must have forgotten an umbrella. I must give it to the driver, he said, getting up from his seat and heading to the door of the bus before Manu could say anything. No, it's yours. It was an old shopkeeper who had come to see Manu's father liked his new umbrella. Your son, who is very good, strong boy, earned it for you. Next time you want to sell your pots or toys, you can bring them to me. Everyone in the bus heard that Manu had done and looked at the boy. Lucky man to have such a good son. They told Baba, who kept smiling and patting Manu's head. It was dawn when they reached home. Manu was very happy to see his village, though he had been away only for a day. He ran to Ma and began telling her all that he had seen. Shushma woke up and Dada came out. They lit the fire and made tea in the big clay pot which they had made with their own hands. As they sat together, slowly the sky turned pink and orange. Another day of making pots out of clay, sunshine and fire began. About the illustrations. Madhubani, forest of honey, painting is named after the district of Madhuban, where, along with the neighboring district of Darbhanga, in the Mithila region of Bihar, it is practiced. Traditionally, women painted in this style to make the floor decorations, aripana, on the festive occasions on paper, and used to wrap the vermilion sindoor sent by the bridegroom to his bride on the walls of the bride's wedding chamber. Different communities have distinctive styles, but all have motifs drawn from the story world of deities, secretaries, primordial creatures, ritual accessories, epic heroes, heroines, women and men, and symbols of prosperity and fertility and agricultural life. Dastkari Hath Samiti is a large organization of Indian craftspeople working to improve the social and economic status of people engaged in traditional handicraft skills. Local forms of painting and craftwork have been used to illustrate this series of 4 stories to encourage the sharing of varied cultural expressions. This work was made possible with the support of UNESCO, New Delhi. And there we come to the end of this particular story. Thank you for listening, and I will try to read your book again once more. Thank you.